Hey, Trusty Herd. I'm Dr. Tim Thayne, author of Not by Chance and founder of Trusty, and this is the Not by Chance podcast. We spotlight the latest innovations in adolescent treatment and show parents how to keep the momentum going at home. You'll hear real success stories from experts, families, and teens because your family's progress is not by chance. In today's episode, Dark Days and Silver Linings, how to use today's challenges for brighter tomorrows, I'll be talking with Roxanne Thayne about the opportunities that await parents who have a teen in treatment. Let's get started. Parents, what we want to do today, I'm going to tell you right up front that we're going to try and reframe something that feels really difficult, scary, into something that's not scary at all, in fact, is exciting. And that is those weeks before the transition of your teen back home after treatment. So I'll be just really obvious with you. That's what we want to do today. If you have read Not by Chance, you've probably come to the diagram in the book where it has the 4 phases of transition. And that those phases, we identified those phases very early on in our work with families for all those years where we go into the homes and work with families. And that first phase, we called it the excitement phase. And I remember some of the first expressions that I got from parents when I was speaking at a treatment program. And I'd bring up these 4 phases, and I would say this phase before your child comes home is called the excitement phase. And those parents who were close to that moment in time when their child had come home, they looked at me funny, like I didn't know what I was talking about. They thought, "Oh, you don't get it. You haven't had a kid in treatment. You don't understand what this is. This is not excitement." In fact, they harped on that so much that eventually I would always have this little caveat. Well, we call it the excitement phase, but you might be feeling anxiety instead. And Roxanne, we recently finished a pilot group with a group of parents that we did group coaching with, and we used the Trusty app and things like that. All of these parents were in the same boat. They'd either had a child recently in treatment, or they still had their child in treatment, and that transition home was coming up soon. And I don't know if I'm sure you remember some of the emotions, and it's a complicated time. I mean, let's be real; it's challenging. And there are a lot of emotions going on right there. And boy, we don't blame parents for feeling anxious during that time.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of nervous laughter going on. A lot of, oh, I get you. I feel that. A lot of big nods in these groups that we would do because they understood exactly how you are trying to craft every part of their life, everything that you could possibly smooth out, make set for this transition that is so crucial. And you've heard about it, you've read about it, your therapists in the program have talked about it. And so you're just feeling a lot of pressure right now. And but we're excited to talk about this phase because we do feel like this is just such an exciting time. And we're not being Pollyanna-ish at all when we call this the excitement phase. It is a reframe, but no matter how much anxiety you might be feeling or your co-parent is feeling or the siblings are feeling, there is great opportunity, and that's what we're going to be covering today.
I love the word you said there, Roxanne, opportunity. And that to me sounds exciting. Mm-hmm. That to me sounds like a vision. It sounds like something very different than maybe what was going on in the past. But, you know, it's realistic for a lot of parents to think more instead of vision and this positive outcome that I envision in the future. It'd be very easy for you parents to think about what happened in the past and the fear of all the relapse that could happen. And it wasn't that long ago before you had doors slammed on you, or you had the cold shoulder, or you had them ignoring your authority, your requests, and things like that. So And maybe to see, it wasn't that long ago when you saw your teen spiral down and really check out of everything in their life because of anxiety in their life and things like that. So those are real. We don't want to discount and say, no, you didn't have trauma before, because no doubt you did. You wouldn't have taken this extreme step of getting that kind of help for your teen. But do you agree that the beliefs that we hold tend to come true? And so we have to examine our beliefs. And if we have a belief that we're going to, or even if it's this fear, and really that's being fed by this belief, like, I don't believe that real change can happen. Deep down, maybe you don't believe real change can happen, even though you see new behaviors, you see new things from your teen while they're in the care of this treatment program and while they're being mentored and coached and supported. But then there's probably that other voice in the back of your head saying, well, that's because they have all these staff and they have all this support and they don't have access to electronics and things like that. So I guess one of the things we're asking is that you dig into the belief system that's underneath the anxiety you feel. Because if you can identify that level of the belief, you can start to question those beliefs. And when you question those core beliefs and often unconscious beliefs, you can have a completely different emotional outcome. And that paves the way for a different outcome inside your family. Roxanne, it wasn't, I don't know how long it's been since you created this journal that you have on your lap, but this was a perfect thing to bring out right now, is that there are silver linings in this upcoming transition of your teen coming home that we want to really focus on.
Yeah, actually, I just looked at the book because I couldn't remember, but it was 2020, and everybody remembers 2020 was a very dark time for our whole world. And that's why I decided to create this. So I have a little publishing company on the side, and I had read my great-grandmother's journal and what she had written about the Spanish influenza in 1919. And as I read her stories of her children dying and the sadness and the sickness and the loneliness and the despair that they felt at that time, I'm so grateful because Josie also wrote about the people who would bring a pot of soup, put it on the back step, bang on the door and run because they were so scared of contracting this influenza, but they were taking care of each other. A man who people didn't really care for in the community would stack wood and bring it to them. And it changed how everybody felt about him. There were these beautiful moments in this opportunity to love and serve each other as everybody was going through it. And that sparked in me the desire to look at our challenges with what is the opportunity here? What can I learn from? And then because I'm a historian, I also wanted to make sure that we write these things down so that they are usable by our children and their children. Because here I was benefiting from my great-grandmother's story. I wanted to do the same. And if I can just give the rest of the story, when I came down with COVID and I was in bed one day, just so sick, we were having a neighborhood barbecue in our yard and everybody was so worried about it. We got our yard clean. We'd worked on it for months to get it ready. And I was in bed and I was just laying there crying and feeling sorry for myself. And as I laid there, I remembered Josie's words and I thought to myself, do you have a 2-year-old daughter laying out on the covered porch to keep her cold until you can bury her 5 days later? Then if not, suck it up. You're going to be fine. And I found such strength in her story. So I decided to create a journal that would help us kind of look at our dark days and find those silver linings and really kind of tease out what we were feeling, because it can all feel overwhelming. The only thing I wanted to share from this journal, though, today was just some of the different terms that we can use when we're talking about our challenges. And I think if you'll write these down, you can use them as a check mark for what you're experiencing today. So maybe there was something in a letter that you received from your teen. Maybe it's something to do with your co-parent. Maybe it's a child who's at home with you still. But I think that you can look at something that triggered you and really define what it was. So was this a disappointment? Now, a disappointment is a sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. Well, I can say I have disappointment sprinkled throughout every day. What? They didn't put away their dishes? Oh my word. How many times do we have to do this? But it can also be a grander disappointment. Like I was hoping for more for their life. I was hoping for more support. So just check yourself and ask, was that a disappointment? Maybe what you're coming up against is an obstacle. An obstacle is something that obstructs or hinders progress. And if you can identify that, then you can encapsulate what you're feeling in, that's just an obstacle. That is something that can be overcome. That is what an obstacle is for. It's to build strength, to help us get creative, and to learn a way around it. Maybe it's a struggle. And a struggle is something that is more continuous. And that is a definition for struggle is a war, fight, task, or goal requiring great and continued effort. So when we talk about struggling teens, we're talking about something that they have been dealing with continually, and it requires great effort to deal with that. So is this a struggle that you are going to continue to work on? A crisis is a dramatic emotional or circumstantial upheaval in life. Now, there's a lot of families who could absolutely write about the crises that they've had, whether it was a suicidal attempt or maybe it was some kind of violent experience or a runaway. Some of those kinds of things are crises where parents have to make a decision right then. And that's how many kids are finally admitted to the treatment that they need. A failure is an act or instance that proves unsuccessful or insufficient. And we all have those kinds of moments in our lives where we can say, that was a failure as me as a parent, doing what I know to do better. The last one is this a fear, an emotion brought on by danger, pain, or evil, producing feelings of dread or anxiety? So I think it was interesting for me to look at all those different kinds of negative feelings and realize that not all are the same. Not all carry the same weight. They can be put into different buckets as you look at what you're struggling with and what those dark days are comprised of. And then the next part of the book, and this is the hopeful part, and I don't know if you would like me to do this right now or hold on.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this because yes, as we go through life as a family and with kids, we have all of those things. Right. I mean, we've all had disappointments, we've all had failures, we've all had crises, and as you pointed out, the parents we're talking to have had a lot of crises to the point of making the hardest decision they probably ever made in their life is to send their teen to a treatment program out of the home. And my question, though, to the parents is, and this is, I know, the next, maybe the page you're talking about, is how does the label that you've put on those events, how's that either helped you or hurt you? How's that either helped you move forward or kept you stuck? And so I think and before we get into the next page, let's talk about the silver lining of this journey you've been on and the fact that you had to take this detour and make this really difficult decision. I've had the opportunity to speak with literally hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands and thousands of parents who are on the cusp of bringing their child home, or maybe speaking in a treatment program in front of a group of parents that had their teens in those treatment programs. And just the mention of the crisis that moved them to make this really difficult decision. As I be in front of a crowd talking about this, I'd look around and most of the parents would have tears in their eyes. Most of them would be, just tears, and this remembering brought on this, all the emotions of that day, that they had to do this. And so that lives with them during this experience. And so that's what I like about your book. It's okay. You don't just stay there though. And if there's not really hard times, there's probably no comparison to something really great either. And without the hard times, some of the silver linings that we're going to be talking about next would actually never be possible. Not that you'd wish people had to go through all of this to, to finally get there, but in a kind of a unique way, the parents with children in treatment programs have an opportunity that no other parent has unless they have had a child in treatment. And those opportunities are, if you think about parents who have a struggling teen at home and it hasn't reached the level of treatment, many of those families are still stuck. Many of those families don't know where to go next or what to do next. They may not have the extent of the crisis, but they're stuck just the same. And sometimes it takes something like what you've been through to actually open the way for something very different, very refreshed, a complete restart. And honestly, that's why I get excited about helping parents at this point in the journey, is that I want to help them move from this place of anxiety and remembering the crisis and kind of being stuck in that and the fear of that returning. I love the opportunity to help parents see something bright and this higher, loftier vision, even though it's important to stay realistic in that because there will be a testing phase, there will be these other phases that come, but that doesn't have to define the ultimate future that you have in front of you. And so with that, Roxanne, talk to me a little bit about, what you're trying to do in the journal to move them from the dark days to the silver linings.
Okay. Well, the point is of having this opportunity to define what the experience was, if this was a crisis or a failure or just a fear, is that you can kind of decide how to even attack this, how to combat it. How do you oppose those feelings that are coming that make you feel like this is my world now? It's probably going to be forever, or it feels like it's going to be forever. Fortunately, I think we learned somewhere that negative emotions are hard to maintain after about 20 minutes, especially highly emotional emotions. And you have to keep feeding the fear or feeding the anger to continue to feel it at that same level. So when you can break these out into these different terms of disappointment, obstacle, struggle, crisis, failure, or fear, then you can start to pull from your little bag of tricks on how you're going to attack that. And I'm going to just go through these, and I suggest that parents, you write these down as well, since you don't have the journal. But the first one is, what is a truth in this situation? And a truth is an obvious or accepted fact or a principle of faith. So one of the things that I have had to rely on when our kids were struggling was the truth that they love me deep down. I know they love me, even though their behavior is not showing that right now. And I know they know I love them, even though they're feeling put upon or picked on or whatever it was. Even though there was this struggle between us emotionally, deep down, that was a truth. So I think if you were to take a moment and write a few truths, that maybe it's even about your co-parent. I know that.
Let me say truth is a very interesting word, because they might, parents might be saying, well, the truth is our world was destroyed, right? I think you have to be picky about the truths that you surface.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, there's a lot of different truths you could pick from. You can't pick all of them. And so you have to decide what truths am I going to focus on.
Well, and this gets into narrative therapy. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, it's a model of therapy that I learned way back when I was going to my master's program at BYU, and absolutely love the concept. And in my mind, if you think about the story of your teen or your child who's in treatment right now, if you're like most of us, the things that, let's say, picture a river going through, and inside the river is everything, all of the different experiences, the different challenges, the different positives, and all of that. And when you're going through a crisis, it's really easy to only see in that river flowing past you just the negatives. And that starts to form your story about your teen and about yourself and about your co-parent and all of that. And that's what brings up the emotions and all of that. So the narrative therapy is essentially helping people rewrite their story. And so you literally can go back in time and identify truths that were just as true as the ones you picked out. They happen to be just more in line with your vision. And that's where I feel like you need to be picky about what truths you decide to focus on, because it will, in the end, tend to come true.
That's a really great point. Thank you for making that. And I love narrative therapy as well, because I've had great experiences with it personally, just doing my own work in a notebook and seeing how I can completely change the story and completely disarm the bombs that were about to go off in my mind about what I was experiencing in a relationship. So after truths, the next tool that we can use is gratitude. And that is the quality or feeling of being grateful or thankful. And sometimes you have to just say, I'm grateful they're not dead. I'm grateful that I have other children to remind me what a good mom can be like, because I have other children who are doing well. You can find things that you're grateful for. You can be grateful that you found a great treatment program. You can be grateful for the home team members that are surrounding your family in this time of trial. That's a pretty obvious one. I also love this next one, and it's quotations. I think quotations are awesome. They are these zingers, these nuggets of truth that are memorable. And of course, as soon as I said that, I can't remember the one that we were going to use today, but would you just read the one by Henry Ford? I loved this one.
Yep. He said, "Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently."
Isn't that awesome?
Love it.
And, put it on your mirror in a sticky note, put it on your phone so it pops up, put it on your forehead, whatever it takes to remind yourself of what good, intelligent, right thinking looks like or sounds like.
And let me emphasize that word intelligently, and that connotes knowledge and wisdom and experience. And if you think about what a parent has gone through, that are at this point, they're at the cusp of bringing their child home again, they have a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. They've done a lot of this examination. And that to me it's like money in the bank. It's like this incredible resource that they have that makes the future different. And so I absolutely, agree that, what you've picked up along the way is actually this knowledge and power is actually going to turn into empowerment in what's coming next. And so I love that one. Parents, since college, my passion has been to help families thrive. For decades after, my team and I delivered the premier in-home aftercare, but it could be costly, and too many families were left without support. That's why we created Trusty, a unique blend of proven curriculum, personalized coaching, and intuitive technology. Starting at just $129 a month, you can access tools and expertise to get and keep your family on track at a fraction of what we used to have to charge. Like we always say, help things go right before they can go wrong. Visit trusty.com, spelled with 2 Y's, to learn more and subscribe today.
Yeah, and the great thing about a quotation is you are reading from other people who have had all of this experience and wisdom, and this is what they've distilled. So you can pick this up from great books you're reading. You can pick it up from your mother-in-law. You can pick it up from scripture. Whatever hits your heart and gives you hope and motivation, use that and reread it. I do a mindset reading every morning, and even if it's a sentence or two, I have a completely different outlook. And sometimes I'll run into you and I'll share it and you'll say, thank you. I needed that before this call or whatever it was. So
I love
quotes
that.
are great.
I just say that the quotes that lift you,
Yeah.
the quotes that cause you to have a bigger vision,
Yeah.
to have a greater hope, to recognize strengths. And again, it's kind of like truths. Not all quotes are created equal. Not all truths are created equal, but find those that do that for you.
Another tool is affirmations, and that's the assertion that something exists or is true. So using that, an affirmation or a mantra, too often we get into these unconscious mantras of they don't love me, they don't care, they're being jerks, whatever it is that we are rehearsing in our minds. And that just feeds that negative story, that negative narrative. So if you could create an affirmation like, my child is getting better every day, and so am I, something like that, and that's something that you can go to when you start to feel yourself spiral into those negative feelings and emotions again. Another one is meditation, a continued or extended thought, reflection, or contemplation. One of my favorites that I've used when we've had difficult times, I'm going to get emotional, with our children is to think back on their birth stories and to think about this perfect little baby that we had so much hope and joy in, and the curiosity of getting to know this person. And if I can bring that vision back up, I have that love and that compassion and that joy fill my heart. And I look at this teenager that's giving me difficulties in a new light. It's just a shift, but it's a powerful shift if you can meditate on those feelings.
I've heard many parents say that.
Really?
Like they'll tell me stories about their child as little kids. And there's a lot of joy and there's a lot of hope for their future. And I think what I hear you saying, though, is that the problem with a lot of these stories that they have is they were like this once and that's forever gone. And that's kind of a hopeless ending to that story. So I think that what you need to think about as a parent is to realize that the essence of that little person that you knew way back when is still there. And in fact, in treatment, I've seen this happen before, both in the wilderness program and residential treatment, is that they would see their child. I'm thinking specifically about cases in the wilderness where we'd have the parents reunite with their child maybe 4 or 5 weeks in, halfway through the program. And we did it in such a way where they would have to find each other using this bull roar that would vibrate when they swung it over their head. And we'd put them, long ways from each other, and they'd have to find each other. But when they would see them for the first time after all these weeks and this break in the conflict and the fear and all of that, and then they see them again and their child has changed and they have something different in their eyes and their countenance, even though in this case, a lot of them were dirty. And even though we'd try to get them to clean up, they struggled to do that. But their parents could see through all of that. And it was like, I literally heard them say, my child is back. And there's such an interesting thing if you think about it. It's not that their child's now little and, is that little baby that they had before. No, it's a grown, teenager. But their essence of their spirit, that part of them that is eternal was there. And they could sense it. And there was joy in that. That's a real thing. And so I just wanted to point that out, that can also be a change in your story about this little child that was so happy and all of that. And now, all this has happened, but be hopeful. You can set conditions that will invite more of that. And that gets to kind of there's a lot of research out there. We've heard of the placebo effect. We've heard of the, what's the other words for some of these things? But basically the research out there, Pygmalion effect, self-fulfilling prophecy, all these things. Belief drives behavior, that our beliefs tend to come true. I mean, someone that goes into the psychiatrist, they've got depression, they get on medication. Studies show that their expectation of getting better, because they've done something now, is possibly more the cause of them feeling better than the medication. And they've proven that by giving some a placebo, and their change was similar to those that had the real thing. So important that we make sure that our beliefs that we are fostering, whether it's through quotations, whether it's through restoring our past stories that have kept us stuck, that we come into this, and let's kind of go back to the specific moment in time now that we're trying to cover, which is the child coming home. So what can parents do that would be practical things to not just give them false hope and just kind of, I'm going to believe and then something good's going to happen, but to really set the stage that they can have good outcomes after treatment. And I think, I don't know if you have some thoughts on that yet, but let me just say a couple of things. Think about this, parents. It's been some time, I don't know how long it's been for you, but it's been some time since the old cycles were in force and there was no kind of way to break through. That's been some weeks or some months since that time has happened. There's been a break in the negative cycles that were going on that had captured your child and your teen and maybe captured your relationship, and you seem to have no power or influence at that time. It's been some time since you felt helpless. You now have learned a lot of things since then. You've got that extra wisdom that you're bringing along. I would say let's add to that now the really practical things you can do leading up to the time your teen comes home to plan this transition well. To have a really clear plan for this afterwards. And I will say that there's a lot of programs out there that this is not their strong point. This is not what they focus most of their efforts on. Most of their efforts are focused on sort of the treatment, kind of the core treatment themes that they need to address, the treatment plan for the teen and so forth. But as they're wrapping up, that's not their strong point. And I guess I'd say here, this is what we can do to help. This is where we can help you, is that process of helping your teen take ownership of the plan so it's not you driving it all yourself when they come home. You want them to own their life's plan going forward. And we're really excited about how we're going to facilitate that through the Trusty app and through the coaching. So if you've done all of that, and you've restored some things, and now you are looking at the future, not with fear, but now with this sense of vision. What's possible? Now, I know there's going to be some rough things ahead. That's okay. That's expected. It happens 100% of the time. But it's how I approach that testing phase with this new attitude, with my new skills, with more clarity on how we're going to handle those ups and downs. And that's why on the other side of that, we're going to have better outcomes.
Two more things that you can do to change those dark days, or to look for the silver linings in your dark days, is to change. And a lot of people feel like that's a negative, that you're being asked to change or to repent or to do something different. That's maybe shows that there was fault on your side. But there's real power in saying, I choose to be different. I choose to parent different. I've done my resume of failure in the Not by Chance book, that exercise, and I am choosing now to be different. I feel like change is just refreshing. And even though it's an admission maybe of those failures, it's also something that opens the windows wide, lets that clean air in, the sunshine in, and it kills the mold. It kills the bacteria, the things that are keeping you sick. And so when you can write down, this is how I'm going to change, these are my goals, or this is how I did change from that old parent that I was, that is refreshing. That gives you energy and the motivation to continue this trajectory of growth. And so I think that's something very important to write down. How have I changed? What did I learn?
This might be the most important advice you're giving, because in the end, you can't change your teen.
Right.
You can't change anybody else but you. And how empowering is it to say, okay, I'm going to go to my place of greatest empowerment. The place of greatest power is actually personally changing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about family systems theory and models and things like that, we're all connected. We're all interconnected with each other. And someone else's change actually influences us. And they don't have to always tell us what to do. They can change on their end, and it will invite us to change. And so your change actually is the greatest invitation that you can make to your teen to also step up and make changes too.
Great. My last one is to celebrate. And this can seem kind of counterintuitive. I get that how do you celebrate a really dark time in your family's life and in their story? But you celebrate the growth. You celebrate the help. You celebrate the people that have come in, stepped into your life, been placed in your path to help your family over these difficulties, over these obstacles. And the description of, or the definition of to celebrate is to observe or commemorate an experience with ceremony or festivity. So when you think celebrate, you're thinking party hats and confetti. That is not it. One of the fun things that we had our parents do at Homeward Bound was we would have them have a home team gathering. And these were some of the highlights for these families, life-changing experiences for families. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's my favorite topic. So I love this one as well. I keep thinking, oh, maybe that's the best one. No, celebration. One of the things that I think is hard for parents to do is to celebrate the progress their teen has made. And because it feels tentative,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like, have we really accomplished it yet, unless it has happened in the real world? And yes, you have permission. You should absolutely authenticate the change through celebration. It also decreases the stigma of them being in treatment, because now it was worth it. It's the sacrifice you've made, the challenge it's been for your teen, the hardship on them, the things they may have missed out on, all of that. It's worth it, because look at them now and look at where they're at and the hard work they've put in. And you can give them a lot of credit. I've told this story before, but it's these home team gatherings, there's a lot of celebration going on there. Yes. But you remember when we were at the Salt Lake airport one day, we were actually there to greet a returning nephew from a church mission. He'd been gone 2 years. And while we're standing there with our signs and everything, there was an escalator that would come down. All the people would come off that to the baggage claim area. And as we're waiting for our nephew to come down, we see this girl. She's hugging a pillow. She's got a backpack on, and she's all alone. She steps onto the escalator. And I'm kind of wondering who she is, because she's looking out over the crowd of people waiting for their missionaries to come down the escalator. And she's looking for somebody. And so I look back and I notice that there's 5 or 6 people way in the back. They've got some balloons. They've got a little poster. And the poster said, "Welcome home, Abby, 21 days sober." And I was so moved by that. Still am when I think about it, because here they were celebrating her 21 days of sobriety and doing it publicly, such that there was no shame where she's been. In fact, it was celebrated that she'd done this. And I really wanted to go over there to him and just say, you guys are awesome, for what you've done. And Abby, you're great for what you've done. and there's great stuff ahead. So that was a powerful moment for me that really encapsulates what you're saying. And even a public celebration like that can be incredibly powerful. We'll do a whole thing on home teams, but great stuff. I appreciate that very much. And yeah, your Dark Days Silver Linings Journal is, I've really loved how you've used that as gifts to people over time. Loss of a loved one, or, hardships of any kind. You've thought about those people and drop one of these journals off to them to try and help them get through it in the best way they can.
It's been very powerful for me to also just, writing out my own. And instead of focusing on the heartache, really focusing on what has been the gifts given to me in this experience.
As a result of it. Yeah.
Right. And they are always there, but you have to stop and think about them. You have to capture them, or they are gone from your mind forever. Because that negative emotion is so insistent that you remember it and that you pay attention to it, that all of these beautiful little miracles and gifts and kindnesses will go unnoticed. But if you will take action and capture those, it will change that story. Your narrative will be completely different about this experience your family's going through right now.
And it will change you.
Right.
And that will be so noticeable by your teen of how you see this whole thing.
And parents, if we are the leaders in our families, we need to lead out and show them how to write and talk about this experience, because they don't know yet. Their therapist can do it, but if mom and dad are doing it different at home, then they're going to fall back into the old patterns of following you.
Fantastic, hon. Thanks for everything that you've brought to the podcast today. And parents, thank you for joining us for this podcast and all the things you're doing intentionally to make your family better, to strengthen your own family and yourself. To wrap up here, let me summarize that some of the points here. First of all is that this transition coming up can actually be an excitement experience because you have a higher vision. Opportunity awaits, and with that opportunity is your vision coming to reality. Another one is that even though they are dark days, there are some things you can do to find the meaning, the silver lining in all of that. And the sooner you do that, I think the better your outcomes will be. And Roxanne gave us several tips on how we can do that. And then finally, I would just say, take full advantage of the break that you've had, the wisdom you've gained, the reframing that you're doing right now as you've listened to this podcast, and rewrite your story about this whole thing if the rewriting of that story can actually facilitate greater happiness in the future, closer relationships with your teen, better cooperation with your co-parent. Now's the time to rewrite that story so that the new story that you've created actually comes true. And in closing, I want to just let you know, again, you've spent your time with us today. We appreciate that. That means you've gained some valuable information. So parents, if you're ready to start and be a founding member of Trustee, sign up early to receive the program at 50% off. This incredible offer is limited to just the first 50 families and won't be offered again because you only launch one time. Check out our website for details. That's trustee with 2 Y's.com.